Do you know who your husband really is? The question drifted through the dim chamber like cold smoke, and for a moment Princess Lysera Vale almost laughed. The restraints around her wrists hummed softly with pale blue light. Not painful, just firm, designed more to discourage movement than to cause harm. Across from her, the Dravik commander sat behind a polished metal table, his silver eyes studying her face with unsettling patience. Beyond the reinforced viewport, stars glowed against the endless black of space. Silent, distant, unconcerned, Lysera lifted her chin. Her copper-gold hair caught the sterile light overhead, creating a faint halo around her features. "Of course I do," she said. "Then tell me." The commander folded his hands together. "Who is Ethan Hayes?" She blinked. The question felt absurd. Ethan was many things. Stubborn, quiet, incredibly patient. A man who spent entire afternoons repairing irrigation pumps instead of replacing them. A man who apologized to furniture after bumping into it. A man who never raised his voice. "He's my husband," she answered. The commander's expression did not change. "That is not what I asked." Somewhere deeper in the ship, machinery vibrated through the deck plating. A low mechanical heartbeat. Lysera shifted slightly in her seat. "He's a farmer." The commander stared at her. Then something happened that made her stomach tighten. He smiled. Not with amusement. Not with triumph. With disbelief. "A farmer," he repeated quietly. "That's what you think." Lysera frowned. "That's what he is." The commander rose from his chair and walked toward the viewport. The polished floor reflected his dark uniform and the stars beyond the glass. "Do you know how many governments reacted when we took you?" he asked. "No, neither do I." His voice dropped lower. "Because none of them answered." The words settled heavily into the silence. Lysera felt a strange unease she could not explain. "What is that supposed to mean?" The commander looked back at her. Usually when a royal princess is captured, messages arrive within minutes. Threats, negotiations, demands. He paused. This time there was only silence. A chill crawled across her skin despite the climate-controlled air. "My family will respond." "Perhaps." His eyes narrowed slightly. "But they are not the ones I'm talking about." The chamber fell quiet again. The stars outside seemed brighter now, sharper, as though the universe itself had leaned closer to listen. Lysera exhaled slowly. "You're wasting your time." "Am I?" The commander returned to the table and activated a holographic display. Lines of text flickered across the air. Names, military designations, archived files. Every entry carried the same status marker. Restricted, classified, sealed. "For 36 hours, he said, our intelligence division has been trying to understand why the moment your husband's name appeared in our reports, senior officials across 6 systems abruptly ended communications." Lysera stared at the floating data. None of it made sense. Ethan hated politics. He hated public attention. He barely tolerated social gatherings. Last month, he spent 3 hours helping a stranded delivery pilot repair a damaged landing strut because he said it was the right thing to do. The idea that anyone would fear him felt ridiculous. "You've made a mistake," she said firmly. "You don't know him." The commander's expression grew strangely solemn. "Princess." He deactivated the hologram. The chamber darkened. "That is exactly what I'm afraid of." For the first time since her capture, Lysera felt uncertainty take root inside her chest. Not fear. Not yet. Just a question she had never thought to ask. Because after 7 years of marriage, after thousands of ordinary mornings and quiet evenings beneath alien sunsets, she realized there was one thing she had never once seen. She had never seen Ethan Hayes angry. The memory arrived without warning. Lysera sat alone in the softly illuminated chamber, listening to the distant hum of the starship, and suddenly she could smell fresh rain on red soil. She could hear the creaking of wooden fencing outside their farmhouse. She could see Ethan standing beneath a gray autumn sky with his sleeves rolled up and dirt on his hands. The contrast felt almost absurd. One moment, she was a captive aboard a military vessel crossing deep space. The next, she was remembering a quiet afternoon on the frontier world of Haven Ridge. Back then, she had believed she understood exactly who her husband was. Their home sat nearly 300 yards from the nearest road, surrounded by rolling fields and low hills that glowed gold during sunset. The farmhouse was simple. White walls, dark roof, a wraparound porch Ethan rebuilt himself after a storm damaged the original structure. Every board carried some tiny imperfection because he insisted on doing the work by hand. He always claimed machines made things too easy. Lysera never understood that. Most advanced civilizations automated everything. Ethan preferred tools older than some star systems. She remembered standing on the porch one evening, watching him repair a weather sensor while warm wind rustled through the grass. "You know you could buy a new one," she had called. Ethan glanced up and smiled. "Probably. Then why spend 3 hours fixing it?" He looked at the sensor in his hand as if it deserved consideration. "Because it still works." That had been Ethan. Patient with broken machinery. Patient with animals. Patient with people. Sometimes painfully patient. A faint smile touched her lips as another memory surfaced. 6 months earlier, a cargo shuttle had suffered an engine failure near their property. The pilot managed a rough emergency landing in one of Ethan's fields. The man spent half an hour apologizing for the damage. Ethan spent 12 hours helping him repair the ship. By sunrise, the pilot was airborne again. The wheat field was ruined. Ethan never asked for compensation. Why? Lysra had asked afterward. Because he needed help. That is not an answer. Sure it is. It had frustrated her then. It still did. Ethan rarely explained himself. He simply acted. The chamber door slid open, pulling her back to reality. The Dravik commander stepped inside, carrying a small data tablet. His expression remained unreadable. "You are smiling," he observed. Lysra straightened slightly. "I was remembering home." "Your husband?" "Yes." The commander was silent for a moment. "Tell me something." He placed the tablet on the table. "Has Ethan Hayes ever spoken about his past?" The question caught her off guard. "Not much." "Family?" "A little." "Military service?" Her answer came immediately. "No." The commander studied her carefully. "Never." Lysra frowned. "He mentioned serving years ago. That is all. No stories." "No. No friends from that period?" She paused. The silence stretched longer than she intended. The commander noticed. Of course he noticed. "There were visitors sometimes," she admitted. "Old acquaintances." "Military." "I assumed so." And Lysra remembered those meetings. They never lasted long. Men and women arriving in unmarked transports. Some wore uniforms. Some did not. Every one of them seemed relieved simply to see Ethan. None ever discussed why they came. The commander lowered himself into the chair across from her. "And how did they behave?" Lysra opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. Because suddenly she realized something she had never questioned before. Every visitor treated Ethan exactly the same way. With respect. Not ordinary respect. Not the respect owed to a friend. It was something deeper. Older. The kind of respect people reserve for someone whose name carried weight. Someone whose decisions had once mattered. Outside the viewport, distant stars drifted past in silence. The commander folded his hands. "Princess," he said quietly, "I think your husband spent a very long time making sure you never asked certain questions." The commander left shortly after that conversation, but his words remained behind like shadows that refused to leave. Lysra sat alone beside the viewport while the starship continued its silent journey through deep space. The glass reflected her face against a backdrop of distant suns. For the first time in years, she found herself examining memories she had never bothered to question. Small moments. Ordinary moments. Things she had once dismissed as coincidences. One memory returned more vividly than the others. It had happened nearly 4 years earlier during a diplomatic reception on Aurelia Prime. The event had been enormous. Hundreds of guests. Representatives from dozens of worlds. Music floated beneath crystal chandeliers while servants moved through the crowd carrying silver trays. Ethan had hated every second of it. She remembered how uncomfortable he looked inside the formal suit she had convinced him to wear. Throughout the evening, he had stayed near the edge of the ballroom, politely smiling whenever someone approached and immediately retreating the moment the conversation ended. At the time, she had found it amusing. Now she remembered something else. An old admiral had entered the hall halfway through the reception. Admiral Victor Kane, one of the most respected military leaders in the entire alliance. The man had commanded fleets larger than most planetary governments. The moment he saw Ethan, he stopped walking. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice. But Lysra had been standing beside him. She remembered the change clearly now. The admiral had frozen for half a second. Then he crossed the room. Not toward royalty. Not toward ambassadors. Toward Ethan. The memory sharpened. She could still hear the music. Still smell expensive perfumes and polished marble. Admiral Kane had reached them and stared at Ethan for several long seconds. "Good evening," Lysra had said politely. The admiral barely heard her. His eyes remained fixed on Ethan. "Sir," he said quietly. Ethan immediately looked uncomfortable. "Victor, it has been a long time." "Not long enough." The admiral laughed softly. A strange laugh. Nervous. Respectful. Almost relieved. At the time she had thought they were old friends. Looking back, she realized something felt wrong. Ethan had never introduced him. Never explained how they knew each other. And the Admiral had spent the entire conversation standing straighter than before, as though he were reporting to a superior officer. The memory faded when the chamber door opened once more. The commander returned carrying another tablet. His expression looked different now. Tighter. More serious. We received additional reports, he said. Lysra looked up. About Ethan? About everyone else. He activated the display. Lines of text appeared in the air. Communications logs. Government notices. Fleet movements. Emergency briefings. She could not make sense of most of them. What am I looking at? She asked. Reactions. The commander enlarged several entries. 3 neighboring governments have issued travel restrictions. Another appeared. Commercial shipping routes are being redirected. Another. 2 military academies suspended training exercises. Lysra stared at him. Why? The commander hesitated. For the first time since they met, uncertainty crossed his face. That is the problem. His voice lowered. Nobody will tell us. The room seemed quieter than before. Even the machinery beyond the walls felt distant. You are saying entire governments are changing policy because of one man? She asked. I am saying entire governments are preparing for something. The commander deactivated the display. The holograms vanished. Only the stars remained. Princess, he said carefully, have you ever wondered why a man with no visible security detail was allowed to live alone on a frontier world without anyone bothering him? Lysra opened her mouth to answer, then stopped, because she suddenly realized she could not remember a single time anyone had threatened Ethan. Not criminals. Not political rivals. Not opportunists seeking influence through marriage. Nothing. For 7 years, absolute peace had surrounded him. At the time it felt normal. Now it felt impossible. The commander looked toward the stars beyond the viewport. We thought capturing you would create leverage. His expression darkened slightly. Instead, it feels like we opened a door without knowing what was behind it. Sleep became difficult after that. The lights inside the chamber automatically dimmed according to the ship's internal cycle, but Lysra spent most of the artificial nights staring through the viewport. Somewhere beyond those distant stars was Haven Ridge. Somewhere beyond those stars was Ethan. She tried to imagine what he was doing at that exact moment. The image came easily. He was probably awake before sunrise. Probably drinking coffee from the chipped blue mug he refused to replace. Probably feeding the livestock before checking the irrigation network. The thought should have comforted her. Instead, it felt strangely fragile. As though the peaceful life she remembered had become a painting hiding something beneath the surface. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The chamber door slid open. The commander entered quickly this time. No measured steps. No calm expression. He carried a tablet in one hand and looked more unsettled than she had ever seen him. What happened? Lysra asked immediately. He stopped beside the table. Something changed. The answer tightened her chest. What changed? He activated the tablet. A 3-dimensional star map appeared between them. Tiny points of light spread across dozens of systems. Several glowed red. These are communication hubs, he explained. 5 hours ago, they began receiving encrypted transmissions. Lysra studied the map. From whom? The commander hesitated. We do not know. Then why are you concerned? He enlarged one section of the map. More red indicators appeared. Then another sector. Then another. The pattern spread outward like ripples across water. Because every transmission contains the same authorization code. Lysra frowned. What does that mean? The commander looked directly at her. It means someone is calling people back into service. A strange silence settled over the room. Military personnel? She asked. Retired officers. Former fleet commanders. Strategic advisors. His voice remained calm, but she could hear tension beneath it. People who left active duty years ago. The star map continued glowing between them. Red lights multiplied one after another. How many? Lysra asked. The commander swallowed. We stopped counting after 12,000 confirmations. For several seconds, she could only stare at him. The number felt impossible. You think this has something to do with Ethan? I think all of this started less than 2 days after your disappearance. The commander dismissed the hologram. The chamber grew darker. Princess, there is more. Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. What? He opened another file. A photograph appeared above the table. Old. Grainy. Clearly decades old. Lysra immediately recognized the man standing at the center of the image. Ethan looked younger. His hair was shorter. His face carried fewer years. But it was him. There was no doubt. Around him stood dozens of officers wearing military uniforms she did not recognize. Every person in the image was looking toward the camera, except Ethan. He appeared focused on something beyond the frame. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "An archive that should not exist." The commander enlarged one corner. A date appeared. 27 years earlier. Lysra stared at it. 27 years. That was long before she met him. Long before he settled on Haven Ridge. Long before the quiet life she thought she understood. "What was his rank?" she asked. "The file does not say." "Then how do you know it matters?" The commander zoomed in again. This time Lysra noticed something she had missed. Every officer in the photograph was standing at attention. Every single one. Her eyes slowly returned to Ethan. He was the only person standing naturally. The only one not posing. The only one acting as though the rules did not apply to him. The commander quietly folded his arms. Because whoever took that picture clearly believed everyone in the room answered to him. Somewhere deep inside the ship, warning tones suddenly echoed through the corridors. Not alarms. Not emergencies. Just brief notifications. Yet the commander immediately looked toward the door. His expression hardened. "What is it?" Lysra asked. He glanced back at her. "Another government just issued a fleet recall." "Another?" "That makes 9. For the first time since her capture, neither of them spoke. They simply listened to the distant sounds of the ship while more stars drifted silently beyond the glass. The next cycle began with silence. Not the ordinary silence of a ship crossing deep space. This felt different. Tighter. Like the atmosphere before a storm that nobody could see yet. Lysra noticed it immediately. Crew members moved faster through the corridors beyond her chamber. Conversations became shorter. Even the security personnel standing outside her door seemed distracted. Whatever was happening beyond those walls, it was growing. The commander arrived later than usual. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes, and his uniform looked slightly wrinkled for the first time since she had met him. He carried no tablet today, no reports, no holograms. Somehow that worried her more. "You look exhausted," Lysra said. He gave a humorless smile. "I have not slept." "Because of Ethan?" The commander walked toward the viewport and stared at the stars for several seconds before answering. "Because of what people are doing after hearing his name." Lysra folded her arms. "You still have not explained why everyone is acting as though my husband is some kind of legend." "Because I do not understand it myself." That answer surprised her. The commander had always seemed confident. Precise. Certain. Now uncertainty lingered in every word. "What happened?" she asked. He finally turned toward her. 3 more fleet recalls. That makes 12. 14. The number hung between them. And nobody will tell us why." The commander slowly sat down across from her. "Princess, governments do not mobilize resources without explanation. They issue statements. They coordinate. They negotiate." His jaw tightened slightly. "This time they are simply moving." Lysra watched him carefully. "Toward us." He hesitated. "Toward a single point." Her stomach sank. "Where?" The commander met her eyes. "Haven Ridge." The words landed harder than she expected. The small frontier world suddenly felt very far away. She pictured the farmhouse again. The fields. The porch. The quiet road stretching across rolling hills. It seemed impossible that dozens of governments would care about a place so ordinary. "Why would anyone go there?" she whispered. "That is the question." Silence returned. Then another memory surfaced unexpectedly. A winter evening 2 years earlier. Heavy snow had covered the fields around their home. Ethan had spent the entire afternoon repairing a neighbor's heating generator. By the time he returned, darkness had settled across the valley. Lysra remembered standing by the kitchen window when a transport descended through the snowfall. Unmarked. Black. Silent. 3 individuals stepped out. They remained inside for less than 20 minutes. When they left, one of them shook Ethan's hand with visible gratitude. She had asked about it later. "Friends." Ethan had smiled. Something like that. At the time she accepted the answer. Now she wondered why every visitor seemed relieved after speaking with him. "Commander," she said quietly, "have you found anyone who actually served with him?" The commander nodded slowly. "One." Her pulse quickened. "And retired. 91 years old. Lives on a medical station near the outer belt." "What did he say?" The commander exhaled. "Almost nothing. Nothing." The moment Ethan's photograph appeared on the screen, the old man stood up. Lysra listened carefully. "Then what?" "Then he asked if Ethan was alive. And when you told him yes." The commander looked away. He started crying. For several seconds neither of them spoke. The answer made no sense. Not fear. Not admiration. Relief. Genuine relief. What else? Lysra finally asked. The commander stared through the viewport. The reflected stars danced across his eyes. Before ending the call, he said one sentence. What sentence? The commander swallowed slowly. He said that if Ethan Hayes had finally come back, then maybe the galaxy still had a chance. The old veteran's words refused to leave her mind. Maybe the galaxy still had a chance. Lysra repeated the sentence over and over while the ship continued through the darkness between stars. It sounded less like praise and more like a confession. The kind of thing someone said after surviving a disaster nobody else remembered. Hours passed. Then another day cycle began. The atmosphere aboard the vessel had changed again. Crew members no longer tried to hide their anxiety. Every screen she glimpsed through the open doorway displayed maps, communications traffic, or fleet reports. Something was accelerating. Whatever chain reaction her disappearance had triggered, it was spreading faster than anyone expected. The commander arrived carrying a sealed metallic case. He placed it on the table without speaking. For several moments, he simply stared at it. What is that? Lysra asked. The reason I have not slept. His voice sounded tired. He entered a security code. Internal locks disengaged with a series of soft clicks. The lid slowly opened. Inside rested a collection of old data drives. Physical storage devices. Ancient by modern standards. Where did those come from? She asked. A military archive buried beneath 3 levels of classification. He lifted one of the drives carefully. Most records connected to Ethan Hayes were erased decades ago. Most, not all. The commander inserted the drive into a portable reader. A holographic display appeared above the table. Text filled the air. Dates. Locations. Deployment records. Personnel assignments. Lysra leaned forward. What am I looking at? The first document we found that was not completely destroyed. The commander enlarged one section. Ethan's name appeared. Her heart immediately skipped. Beneath it was a list of commendations stretching far longer than she expected. Humanitarian missions. Evacuation operations. Disaster relief deployments. Diplomatic interventions. The entries continued for page after page. These are military records? She asked. Yes. She frowned. There is no combat history. Exactly. The commander looked troubled. That is impossible. Lysra studied the list. Most assignments involved helping civilians during crises. Refugee transport coordination. Colony recovery efforts. Emergency supply distribution. None of it matched the terrifying reputation everyone seemed to associate with him. This looks like Ethan, she said quietly. What do you mean? Helping people. The commander nodded slowly. That is what worried me. He opened another file. This one was shorter. Far shorter. A single page. Most of the text had been redacted. Entire sections vanished beneath black security markings. Only fragments remained visible. Lysra read silently, then stopped. What is Operation Lantern? She asked. The commander shook his head. Unknown. And this? She pointed toward another line. Strategic Resolution Authority. No records exist. How is that possible? Because someone erased them. The answer settled heavily over the room. The commander enlarged the final visible section. One sentence remained untouched by censorship. Just one. Lysra read it twice. Then a third time. Recommended for permanent retirement following successful completion of final assignment. Retirement? She whispered. Yes. The commander folded his arms. Notice the date. She did. 27 years ago. The same year as the photograph. The same year everything seemed to disappear. Whatever happened, the commander said quietly, it ended that year. Lysra stared at Ethan's name suspended above the table. A strange sadness touched her unexpectedly, because she suddenly remembered something he once told her. It had happened during a summer storm while they sat together on the porch. Rain drummed against the roof overhead. Lightning flickered beyond the hills. Ethan had been unusually quiet that evening. Do you ever miss your old life? She had asked. He watched the rain for a long time before answering. No, not even a little. His smile had been small, almost melancholy. Some chapters should stay finished. At the time she assumed he meant military service. Nothing more. Now she was no longer sure. A sudden alert sounded from the command deck. Not once. Not twice. 3 rapid tones. The commander's expression immediately changed. He activated his communicator. A voice spoke urgently from the other side. Lysra could not hear every word. Only fragments. Incoming transmission. Priority level 0. Authorization confirmed. The commander's eyes widened. Who is it? Lysra asked as he lowered the device. He looked at her for several seconds before answering. Someone finally responded. Who? The commander swallowed. The message came directly from Haven Ridge. The command deck was louder than Lysera expected. Not with panic. Not with alarms. With movement. Officers crossed between holographic displays. Analysts spoke in hurried voices. Data streamed across transparent screens suspended in the air. The moment the commander escorted her inside, dozens of eyes briefly turned toward her before returning to their work. Whatever message had arrived from Haven Ridge had transformed the entire ship. A massive star map floated above the center of the room. Hundreds of indicators blinked across known space. Lysera immediately noticed something strange. Every route seemed to converge toward a single destination. Home. The commander guided her toward the primary display. The transmission arrived 12 minutes ago, he said. Audio only. From Ethan? She asked. We believe so. Believe. Not know. The choice of words unsettled her. A senior communications officer looked up from her station. Playback is ready, sir. The commander nodded. Begin. The bridge gradually fell silent. One by one, conversations stopped. Even the background noise of moving personnel seemed to fade. Then a voice filled the room. Lysera felt her heart stumble. Ethan. There was no mistaking it. Calm. Deep. Familiar. The same voice that used to read beside the fireplace during winter evenings. The same voice that greeted neighbors by name. The same voice that always sounded slightly amused by the universe. This is Ethan Hayes. Silence followed. Several officers exchanged confused looks. The message continued. I am requesting the immediate release of Princess Lysera Vale. Nothing dramatic. No threats. No demands. Just a simple statement. Ethan paused before speaking again. I understand misunderstandings happen. I would appreciate the opportunity to resolve this one peacefully. A few officers looked visibly relieved. The commander did not. Lysera noticed his expression immediately. That sounds reasonable, she whispered. Keep listening, he replied. The recording resumed. To the individuals responsible, I am offering a chance to return home. Ethan's tone never changed. Never rose. Never sharpened. No punishment. No retaliation. No conditions beyond her safe return. The bridge remained completely silent. Then came the final sentence. Please do not make me ask twice. The transmission ended. For several seconds nobody spoke. Lysera frowned. That is all. Yes. There is nothing threatening about that. The commander slowly looked toward the main display. That is not why everyone is concerned. He gestured toward another officer. The woman immediately activated a secondary screen. A list appeared. Hundreds of entries. Then thousands. What is that? Lysera asked. Responses. To the message? No, the commander's voice grew quieter. To hearing the message. Lysera stepped closer. The list continued scrolling. Military governments. Colonial authorities. Defense councils. Independent systems. Every few seconds another entry appeared. Authorization confirmed. Deployment approved. Standby orders rescinded. Reserve personnel activated. I do not understand. The commander pointed toward the timestamp. All of these occurred within 7 minutes of the transmission. Her stomach tightened. Why? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Then another notification appeared across the main display. Priority signal. Incoming. A communications officer immediately opened the channel. An elderly woman appeared as a hologram above the bridge. Her uniform carried more decorations than Lysera could count. The moment the image stabilized, every officer present straightened instinctively. Fleet Marshal Renwick, the commander said. The elderly woman ignored him. Has Ethan Hayes issued a second message? No, ma'am. The marshal visibly relaxed. Actually relaxed. As though hearing that answer removed a burden she had been carrying for years. Good. The commander hesitated. With respect, why does that matter? The old woman looked directly into the camera. For the first time, Lysera saw genuine concern in her eyes. Because if Ethan ever feels the need to repeat himself, she said softly, it means something has gone terribly wrong. The channel disconnected. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Outside the viewport, stars drifted through the darkness exactly as they always had. Yet for the first time since her capture, Lysera realized the entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Everything changed 3 hours later. The ship had entered a neutral transit corridor when the first report arrived. Then another. Then 12 more. Lysera stood beside the command deck viewport as officers rushed between stations. Nobody looked frightened anymore. That emotion had evolved into something else. Anticipation. The commander stared at a stream of incoming messages scrolling across a display. What now? Lysera asked. He enlarged one report. Sightings. Of what? Ships. That answer sounded harmless until she saw the numbers. Hundreds of vessels had appeared near Haven Ridge. Not warships, not invasion fleets, civilian transports, medical carriers, supply vessels, diplomatic couriers. The list continued growing by the minute. Why are they gathering there? She asked. That is what we are trying to determine. Another notification appeared. Then another. Entire organizations were arriving voluntarily. Relief agencies, colonial governments, humanitarian foundations, veteran associations. Some names Lysra recognized. Others had vanished from public records decades ago. This makes no sense, she whispered. The commander nodded. I agree. An officer suddenly approached carrying a tablet. Sir, we found additional archive material. The commander accepted it immediately. Source: Historical Media Records. He activated the file. A holographic image appeared above the table. Grainy footage. Ancient. The quality was poor, but Lysra instantly recognized Ethan. Younger. Standing among a crowd near what appeared to be a disaster recovery zone. Damaged buildings filled the background. Emergency workers moved through drifting dust. The footage contained no audio at first. Then a reporter's voice emerged. Recovery operations continue across all affected sectors. Relief Coordinator Ethan Hayes remains on site despite requests for immediate evacuation. Lysra blinked. Relief Coordinator. Not Admiral. Not Commander. Not General. The footage continued. Citizens approached Ethan one after another. He listened. He nodded. He directed resources. He comforted frightened families. The entire recording showed the same thing. Service. Nothing else. That is him, Lysra said quietly. Yes. The commander did not look away from the screen. And this footage was recorded 27 years ago. Another clip appeared. Then another. Different worlds. Different crises. Different years. Yet Ethan remained exactly the same in every recording. Calm. Patient. Focused entirely on helping others. Where is the frightening secret everyone keeps talking about? Lysra asked. Nobody answered immediately. Finally, the commander exhaled. I think we have been asking the wrong question. Meaning? He turned toward her. What if people are not reacting to something he did? Then what are they reacting to? The commander looked back at the footage. Ethan was helping an elderly colonist climb into an evacuation shuttle. A simple act. Ordinary. Human. Maybe they are reacting to who he chose to be after everything ended. Before Lysra could answer, another alert echoed across the bridge. Priority transmission. Incoming visual contact. Every screen instantly switched to the same image. A lone transport descending toward Haven Ridge. Small. Unremarkable. No military markings. No escort. No fleet. Just one vessel crossing a golden sky above familiar farmland. Lysra recognized the valley immediately. Her breath caught. Home. The transport touched down near the farmhouse. Dust drifted across the fields. The hatch opened. A single figure stepped onto the grass. Ethan, wearing the same brown work jacket he always wore during autumn. Nothing about him looked legendary. Nothing about him looked dangerous. He simply stood there beneath the afternoon sun and gazed across the horizon. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, ships throughout the valley began landing. Hundreds of them. Not because they were ordered to. Not because they were summoned. Because they wanted to be there. And as Lysra watched thousands of strangers arrive from every corner of the galaxy, she finally understood the truth everyone else seemed to know. Whatever Ethan Hayes had been in the past, his greatest achievement was not something he destroyed. It was how many lives he had quietly rebuilt afterward. The release happened without ceremony. No negotiations. No dramatic declarations. No public announcements. Less than 24 hours after Ethan's message reached the galaxy, the ship changed course. Lysra stood beside the viewport as stars stretched into lines of light, and then settled once more. Nobody celebrated. Nobody argued. The commander spent most of the journey overseeing logistics while countless transmissions flowed through the communication network. It felt less like a rescue operation and more like an entire civilization quietly correcting a mistake. When Haven Ridge finally appeared on the main display, Lysra felt tears gather in her eyes. The familiar valleys rolled beneath a golden afternoon sky. Fields swayed in the wind. Dirt roads curved through the countryside exactly as she remembered. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. The transport touched down beside the farmhouse. The hatch opened with a soft hiss. Warm air carrying the scent of grass and fresh soil drifted inside. Lysra stepped onto the landing ramp. For a moment she could not move. Ethan stood 30 yards away near the fence line. One hand rested on a wooden post. The other held the old work gloves he always carried. He looked exactly the same. No uniform, no escort, no symbols of authority, just the man she loved waiting beneath the sun. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Ethan crossed the distance slowly and stopped in front of her. His expression softened. "Hey." The simple greeting nearly broke her. "Hey," she whispered back. For several seconds they simply stood there. Then Ethan wrapped his arms around her. The embrace felt familiar. Safe. Real. Not the embrace of a legend. Not the embrace of a hero. Just home. When they finally stepped apart, Lysera searched his face. "You knew this would happen." Ethan smiled faintly. "I hoped it would. The fleets. The governments. The people." Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" The wind moved through the grass around them. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime hanging from the porch roof produced a gentle metallic note. Ethan looked toward the horizon before answering. "A long time ago, I had a job." Lysera almost laughed. "That is the worst explanation anyone has ever given." "Probably." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I was never very good at talking about it." She studied him carefully. "Why did everyone come?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Because years ago, when things were difficult, a lot of people helped me." "That is not what they said." His smile became smaller. "People remember things differently." Behind them, dozens of transports remained parked across the valley. Thousands of visitors had traveled unimaginable distances simply to stand nearby. Not because they feared Ethan, because they trusted him. The realization settled gently inside her heart. All this time she had searched for the terrifying secret hidden behind his past. She had expected some unimaginable display of power, some revelation that would explain the galaxy's reaction. Instead, she discovered something far simpler. People had answered because Ethan spent decades answering them first. As the sun slowly dipped toward the horizon, painting the clouds with shades of gold and crimson, Lysera rested her head against his shoulder. The stars began appearing one by one overhead. Quiet. Endless. Eternal. "So that is it?" she asked softly. "That is the big secret." Ethan looked up at the evening sky. "What secret?" A laugh escaped her. The first genuine laugh since her capture. Around them, the valley grew calm. The visitors talked quietly. The ships rested peacefully beneath the fading light. And for the first time, Lysera finally understood what the galaxy had been trying to tell her. The most extraordinary thing about Ethan Hayes was never what he could do. It was what he chose not to become. In a universe obsessed with power, he had spent his life choosing kindness instead. And somehow, that had left a mark deeper than any legend ever could. Above them, the first stars reflected in the farmhouse windows. Warm lights glowed from within. Home waited only a few steps away. Ethan offered his hand. Lysera took it. Together they walked toward the porch while the evening settled around them. And for once the stars did not seem distant at all.